Good morning. Welcome to another live edition of the radiologictechnologist.com podcast, YouTube channel, a blog, you name it. I had an interesting comment yesterday, more of a grateful comment really, about a video I did called Negotiating Your Salary. And I got about 20 minutes before I have to be at work, so I thought I'd hop on and do a quick review. It's only a nine minute something second video, and a lot of times I do these videos rather spur of the moment with content that pops up, and I'm sure if I went back I can add more to it. So um, today's platform, I guess, I don't know what you call it, is going to be a review of this video, if I can stand looking at myself for that long, and see if we can't add more information to the to what I offered back in May of 2020.
I was looking at Facebook on my way home, and I saw a great question that I've never addressed. The question was, basically, somebody said, I graduated from X-ray school. I passed my boards with flying colors. I got an interview, and during the interview, they told...
I'm going to have to go smack my dog. Milo, knock it off. Why do you wait till I start a live stream to start barking?
Told me that I basically had the job, and that I needed to wait until HR called me to discuss pay. And I wanted to share my experience with you on that topic because I was a tech for a long time, and then in administration for about 10 years, still am. And there's some things that you probably don't know if you've never been in administration, and here they are. Rule number one, and it's really business rule number one, is never accept your first offer. Very rarely does a company ever look at the scale of how much they can pay you from the lowest to the highest, or the lowest to the highest, and say, let's offer them the absolute maximum we can pay them. They never do that. If there's some competition and there's been some negotiations going on, maybe, but...
Let me check something real quick. I don't know that I want to review this in real time. I think what I'll do is hop off the live, review it, and mark certain areas that I think are valuable, and then talk about those. Thanks for hitting the live button for those that are already on. I appreciate that. I thought I'd get on and kind of watch this video with you, but I'm not sure I can stand sitting here for 9 minutes watching myself. So I think I'll hop back off. The other thing I want to start doing is putting show notes in that list the different time points of everything that we discussed, because that would be super helpful as well. So I'm going to jump back off the live, unless anybody has any questions, and review that video and come back maybe after work today and sit down and discuss the aspects of it that need review, or that, come on, where is it at? I don't want that. Super helpful as not even loading, see that? Poof, that's slow. Hey, Rich, how you doing, buddy? Or would I call you Junior? Or would I call you GRJ? What do you think? Is it worth sitting here listening to it and critiquing it? I mean, right now what I'm talking about is how there's always a preset amount that any hospital is prepared to offer. They already know. We did a kind of a market analysis years ago at one system. Reached out across the country, gathered all this data to see how much all the techs were making, kind of figured out what an average would be. And you do have to take certain local factors into account, like the local cost of living. We can't say, well, California's paying $55 an hour for their tech, so we have to pay $55 an hour to stay competitive. You can't necessarily do that. They pay that high because their cost of living is that high. Here in Idaho, the cost of living is much, much lower. When I moved from, thanks, buddy. When I moved from Arizona, the Phoenix market, up here to southern Idaho, the cost of living dropped by 20%. And that's also one of the reasons that I did the article about how to keep the most money in your pocket. Because when you're, doesn't matter if you're a student or if you're a tech, um, what you're most concerned with is how much money you're going to end up at the end of the day. And a lot of people make the mistake of saying, well, California pays the highest, so I'm going to go there. Well, California's cost of living is almost as high as Hawaii. They ranked them. So I wrote this article and I ranked all these states I compared them against the cost of living index. That's a well-renowned cost of living index, and kind of pitted them against each other and came up with a calculation for who lets you keep the most money in your pocket. Wyoming came out on top. I did this in 2019. Wyoming came out on top. Their hourly pay across the board is $26.83, and they have a cost of living index of 90.5, which is pretty decent on the scale that I used. It's not my scale. It's cost of living index, the MERIC, the Missouri Economic Research and Information Center. So when you're looking for that pay, keep in mind how much you're going to be paying out of pocket. But what we did, and what most hospitals do, is they do a market analysis. They determine what's fair, because you're going to lose employees left and right if you're not paying enough. We've seen that before. You're going to lose them to the competitors. They're going to go out of state, whatever. So you come up with this range that you're comfortable with, that you vet out through the CFO and human resources and everybody. I was a part of the Radiology reset when it came to market analysis on pay, and there's also the ASRT analysis that I shared yesterday on my live, right here, the ASRT.org. This link, and if I can grab it, I'll put it in the comments section for you. But this gives you the average pay across the country. It gives you a lot of things. It gives you the salary per modality, like right here, rad techs across the board, what they've been making since 2007, and the increase that we've seen. But further down, I mean, this even shows program directors at schools and supervisors and lead techs and all that. But when you scroll down into the states, you can see what each modality. And this is an annual report, and it's usually locked behind a paywall because it's from the ASRT, and you have to be a member of the ASRT to access this data. But this particular year they released it, or at least it got onto Google and it's out there. So you can go to your state and you can kind of see what the average pay. And you got to remember, this particular survey is a survey they sent out to all the active technologists, and it's the answers they got back. And you've got to remember, like Alabama, for example, is saying that a rad tech makes $46,388. That may not be, that's not across the whole state. That's an average or a mean of everybody's answers. Your bigger hospitals are always going to pay more than your little hospitals, and your outpatient clinics are going to pay a little bit differently. But you want to make sure that, we're talking about negotiating. Let's see if I can get back to it. We're talking about negotiating your salary either after your interview, once you get a job offer, or if you ever decide it's time to sit down with your human resources and say, I've been here long enough and my pay needs to be adjusted appropriately. Checking the comments here. Do you know how much a tech would make starting off in California? Yeah, we just covered that yesterday, I think. This was 2019, and a rad tech was making $87,323. Now that's all of California, right? That's northern to southern, averaged together, big hospital, little hospital. What I recommend, if you want to do that, if you want to find out what everybody's making, is heading over to our YouTube channel, our Facebook group, and posting that question inside the group, more specifically, like what town, what Northern California, Southern, whatever. Be as specific as you can without, you can even name the hospital if you want to, and people can and will still answer that question, but some people aren't comfortable talking about their salary on the internet because they're worried about getting in trouble at work. And what we're seeing is an emerging trend where people are becoming less and less afraid to discuss it because there's nothing illegal about talking about your salary. And when your human resources department tells you not to talk about it, really what they're saying is, we don't want to get caught paying an inappropriate amount, so please don't share what you're making with anybody else, because ultimately somebody over time, what happens is people that have been with the company longer are just getting an annual raise, a cost of living increase, or a merit raise. There's two different types of raises, right? Cost of living is where they just try to give you enough to keep up with inflation, and merit is where they say, well, we have this range where if you just barely do your job, we'll give you 50 cents. If you do, above average, we'll give you $1, and if you're the best we've ever seen, we'll give you $1.25 or whatever it is. That's a merit raise. It's based on your merit or how well you're doing. It has nothing to do. Some places even do both. They do a cost of living increase and a merit raise, which is really how it should be, because the reason they don't want you talking about your pay is because the people that have been there the longest, all they've gotten are these merit raises or cost of living increase, which barely keeps you up with the cost of living, where new people coming in are being given the market analysis amount. So let's say I've been in a hospital for 10 or 15 years. I got hired on at $17 an hour back in the day, and I've been getting these little 50 cent, 25 cent, 75-cent raises year over year. And then 15 years later, somebody new comes in fresh out of school, and market says they're worth $27 an hour. Maybe I've only made it to 24 with these little incremental raises. Suddenly that's not fair, right? And if the newbie tells me, hey, I'm making 27 and I'm only making 23 and I've got 15 years experience, I'm going to be pissed. And I'm going to go to HR and I'm going to go, hey, how's that fair? And, well, how did you know that? Well, they told me. Well, they're not supposed to talk about that. Well, you shouldn't be paying crap. So this negotiating your salary thing talks about that, and how to negotiate and how to show what your value is. And that's something you have to keep in mind as a technologist, is what you have to always remind yourself of, what your value is, and be willing every now and then to go look outside the box at what other people are making. And on the Facebook group too, there are plenty of people talking about salary and pay, and that kind of got sparked by this thing out on the Google campus where Google told everybody not to talk about it, and the employee said, you can't tell us not to share about why they got into the, why are you telling us that? Because you're not paying us fairly across the board. And people started talking about it, and people started getting fired, and then they got sued, because you can't do that. You can't dictate free speech. You can't fire somebody for free speech. Anyway, I recommend you discuss it if you can. I mean, don't be flagrant about it and start a riot at your hospital over it. But I think it's intelligent and worthwhile to talk about salaries to make sure that the hospital is being held accountable. So just to answer your question, it was 87,000. Again, this was 2019, and a lot has happened since then. I guarantee you that number's gone up quite a bit, and California is in a bad way. If you head over to our Facebook group and you look at our radiology tech group, you'll see advertisement after advertisement of jobs being offered. My computer's really having a hard time. It's only a 2-year. I think I bought it in December of 2020. But it seems like when I run the camera and the Streamlabs, excuse me, it has a really hard time keeping up. Today's live stream, by the way, is brought to you by Key Lime Pie. Another great flavor. And bang, if you're out there, please sponsor my channel. That'd be awesome. Even if it was just some free drinks every now and then. So we're talking about the group, right? And we're saying, let's see, how can I search this? Let's search this on I don't know. Pay is pretty simple, but salary is a little too specific. Nobody says, what salary are you making? That's going to bring up these jobs that are getting posted and what they're paying. See, here's an X-ray tech paying between 70 and 80 bucks an hour in Chicago, but that probably includes room and board. See, what they do is they take your total cost to send you there. The room and board, the food, the travel, all that stuff. And then they break it down by your 40-hour work week. And they go, you're going to make 70 to 80 bucks an hour. No, you're not putting that in your pocket. That covers everything. So you really have to call these people and say, what exactly am I taking home? Because I almost fell for one of those. I was going to go do a travel gig. And by the time it was all over, it was like 28 bucks an hour. So I'm like, no, you need to put that in your ad. Trying to see if I could find somebody. How much do radiation therapists pay tend to increase year over year? There's 12 comments on that. There have been people. It's fairly common for somebody to say, how much do you make? Is there anybody that works in Pensacola, Florida? What is your average salary down there? Here's another good one. I'm seeing conflicting information about salaries. Does pay increase substantially if you're certified in multiple modalities? That's a great question. 26 comments. So anytime you have questions, salary related or whatever, take a deep dive into the group. There's 4,000 texts in there now, and they range from X-ray. We've got an RRA in there now that's offering a lot of help. And check it out and see what they're saying. There's the negotiating your salary that we're talking about. Well, check it out. You can plug in California. You can plug in pay per hour, however you need to look at it. But let's get this back in line with these guys. I wanted to look up the live and make sure. Where did I start? Got my intro started. You see the difference in what I look like over the. I've been doing the channel for a couple years now. Anyway, I also wanted to ask if it's worth working overtime if they're going to take taxes. Yeah, so you're a smart man to think about that. My wife is an X-ray tech, and she just pulled this huge. They're hurting so bad at the hospitals now that they're offering these big bonuses. So she was offered a $3,000 bonus if she picked up like an extra 80 hours over, I don't know, a 1 month or 2 month time frame or something like that. And while that sounds awesome, really there's a lot of caveats, and you're calling out one of them. She lost 40% of it to taxes. So 40%. Because anything like that could be treated if it's treated as a bonus, the IRS taxes you at about 40%. So overtime isn't necessarily treated as a bonus, but it does increase your salary quite a bit. Let me put it this way. I did in 2010. I was working 312s at a hospital, and we opened up another hospital, and they asked me if I would open up that one and work there on the night shift because I could cover 3 modalities. I did X-ray, CT, and ultrasound at night, and I covered. It was like, well, basically I did 3 nights at my home hospital and 3 nights at the other one. And for 10 months, I did 6 12s in a row, and I made about $150,000 that year. This was 2010, and I thought, man, I am the smartest guy on the planet, and this plan is really paying off. I'm making so much money. Of course, I was sacrificing my family. I was sacrificing my sleep. I was sacrificing some personal happiness and all the things that come with working a lot of hours. And that was a night shift, and studies show that your life expectancy shortens if you work the night shift your whole career. By the end of it all, I think I owed $30,000 or $40,000 in taxes, and I had taxes being taken out. But all that overtime, because if you work 312s, that's your full-time job. The next 312s are all overtime. So while the checks were fat, that meant Uncle Sam got a huge portion of it. So you have to, that's why I talk a lot about side hustles on this channel, because it's awesome to get excited about radiology, which I am, and I always have been. I love radiology, and I love solving the puzzle of what's wrong with a person through imaging. But you have to have an out. You have to have a break mentally and physically from doing the same thing every day, or you'll start. It's one of the things I talk about in my burnout article. Not necessarily a side hustle, but taking a break and self-care. But you have to find something else to do on the side so that you can get a break. Because those of us that are workaholics, we'll just, like I did in 2010, we'll just plow it out. They needed my help. They were begging for my help. I'm like, if they're willing to pay me time and a half, 36 hours every week, and those checks were, I framed the biggest week of pay, or 2 weeks, was during that year, and I think I made $10,000 or something that pay period. But and I framed it and hung it up. But uh, with that absolutely comes consequences, and so don't overextend too much. I mean, do what you want, but I say do your 40 hours, and if your team needs you, then help out and pick up some extra hours. If it's just administration squawking about we don't have enough staff and we need you to work more, your health, your sanity, your family, you come first. I'm also not a big fan of them sending people home when times are tough and making them live on their own PTO. That PTO was earned to use when I need to use it, not when the company needs me to use it. So caution there as well, but absolutely be prepared. And you can talk to the HR department about that too, GRGA. You can say, if I work 10 hours of overtime, can you tell me what my tax rate on that's going to be? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Hang on just a second. Let's see. I've been told it isn't smart because they're going to take more from. Yeah, yeah. So depends on your situation. If you need the money, you will make extra money taking overtime. If you are worried about your tax situation, maybe reconsider doing something somewhere else. Um, we're talking about negotiating your salary and how there's a set range that hospitals have. And what I just said in my video was that they're never going to come out and offer you the highest ranking. Yeah, we can talk more about that if you want, brother. These live chats are about whatever we want them to be. So if you have more concerns, I've done that. I've taken a ton of overtime. I've made a ton of extra money doing that. But you do pay a lot more in taxes, so you have to weigh. But the other thing to consider, brother, is your tax write-offs, because just because we work for somebody else doesn't mean we can't have expenses. So don't forget that you'll have standard deductions, and you'd have to spend more than that to do a 1099 and claim all your expenses. But if you're doing a lot of things to be an X-ray tech, like so your CEUs are a tax write-off because those are required for your job. Your scrubs, if you're buying them and your hospital's not, which most of us have to buy our own. Um, Anything related to, if you're working towards a degree and it's related to your job, that's a tax deduction. Anything you pay towards a school, like if you're going for your bachelor's in radiology or an MSRS, which is a master's in radiologic science, or anything related like that, any education towards your job is an expense for your job. And so maybe that would make. I'm going to write that down. That would be a good topic. Uh, Things that are expenses, rad tech expenses for tax purposes. But you should keep track of that stuff and what you spend on for your job, and at the end of the year, add it all up and see if it's more than your standard deduction. And that's also kind of the brilliance behind putting pre-tax income into 401ks and things like that, because you can put I think you can put really as much as you want into a 401k, and that comes out of your paycheck before they write the paycheck, and then you get taxed on what you receive on the paycheck. And that's something you can talk to either a financial advisor, which I am not. I'm not a financial advisor, or your HR department, or you should have a 401k person at your hospital that comes from that 401k company once a month or once a week or whatever, to talk to all the employees who want to talk about that kind of stuff. But if you elect to have 3% of your pay taken out and put into a 401k, that gets put into your retirement fund, and that is pre-tax, and so you don't get taxed on that amount. So there's a lot of tax strategies. There's a lot of tax strategies for kind of paying the least amount of taxes as possible without being, shifty about it. You certainly don't want to draw the attention of the IRS, but there's a lot of things you can do that would help out with that. I really want to work 80 to 100 hours a week. I love to work long. I have all the time to work. I know I can do it. I've done it for 2 years now, and I've worried because I want to save for a house. Yeah, so you really ought to start getting into a discussion with a financial planner and find out all the ways you can get that money taken out of your check pre-tax. Because if you work for a decent corporation or hospital, whatever you want to call it, they should have a matching system, which means like, let's just say if you put 5% in, they'll match up to half of that and put their money in. So if you put in 5%, they'll put in 2.5%. So now you're at 7.5% of money going into your retirement, and the 5% you put in is not taxable. And there's Roth IRAs, and there's health savings accounts, there's 401ks, all those things you can discuss with a financial advisor at your work. If they don't have one, you're just going to have to set up an appointment to go talk to somebody about it. They won't short you. I'm also worried they're going to try and short me money. You just have to keep your eye on it. I mean, they can make mistakes, sure. Hopefully they're not the kind of company that does it on purpose, but I worked for a hospital that didn't even pay us. They were like, sorry, we're broke, and you're going to have to wait till the next payday. And we were like, doctors were quitting. We're like, wait, what? You're not giving us a paycheck? And that was right. I stayed, and that was writing on the wall. They eventually got bought out because they were in financial trouble. But that plays into loyalty, right? Being loyal to hospitals is becoming questionable because it's getting harder and harder to get the treatment that we feel we deserve. And so, I used to be one of those fools that would say, I'll stick with this company through thick and thin, and they'll take care of me. And I can honestly tell you, I've been let go from two decent systems after several years of giving them my all, devoting my time to them, not spending as much time with my family as I had preferred, lots of things, only to be let go like I didn't matter at all. So I learned the hard way, and I share that experience somewhat frequently so that you guys don't make that mistake. But MRI, man, what's up, brother? Are you at work? Rich, would you say it's smart for me to work those hours? You can, yeah. So my philosophy, and I've got a 24-year-old daughter who's kind of doing that. She's a CNA, and she's working stupid hours, 100 hours a week. I say do it now while you physically can. And if you don't have kids and all that, like she just got married, doesn't have any kids or anything, I say crank out those hours now while you're young and while you don't have all these things pulling at you. Because you can always lessen it later, but pull those hours and put that money away smartly. And you need to start finding passive investments, and that's a whole nother topic. But you need to make a plan on where you're going to put that money so that it makes you money without you having to do anything. Because at some point you're not going to want to put in all these hours, or you're physically not going to be able to. You may be boosting a patient in the ICU at some point and pull your back, and it may start hurting in a bad way on a daily basis, and all the physical therapy in the world might not help you. You'll find different modalities have different physical limitations. Sonographers, when I was in ultrasound school, cool man, enjoy your break. I've been really digging your videos, and all you're putting in 110%, brother, and I'm really proud of you for all that. You're having group conversations, and you're doing a lot of videos. You're putting out content on your blog. Your introvert stuff. Keep it up, man. You're gonna see some huge gains in your subscribership. I mean, I plug you all the time, but I've really liked to see people in our industry coming out and talking about what we do, because who did that 20 years ago, right? Or 10 years ago? I mean, YouTube's been around a while now, we were so under the thumb of administration, about what we do at work. And of course, I'm not advocating that you video at work on the clock or anything like that, but there's nothing wrong with us sharing what we do. So kudos to you, man. Keep it up. And I'm pretty sure that was your shirt, right? That you sent me with the multicolored skull on the front. I wear that all the time. But Get Rich Jr. is asking, should he bust his, at work, working a ton of hours? And I say, yeah, don't do it for the company. Do it for you. Do it for the right reasons. Ask yourself why you're doing it, and make a smart plan on what you're going to do with that money. Make a plan on how you're going to take that money and invest it, or where you're going to put it. You said you're looking to maybe buy a house. I think is what you said. Have a plan. When I did it in 2010 and made 150,000, I was just paying for everything for my kids. I have 6 daughters. They all wanted to go dance. There was a time I was paying $1,000 a month for cheer for all my girls, most of them, to be in this cheer class every week. And was it an investment? Yeah, in them. Was there a chance of them ever making a career out of it? No, not really. But it was something for them to do. It was a physical activity. They enjoyed it. We enjoyed watching them as parents. But try to put your money into things that can pay off in the future in one way or another. It's always good to put money into your kids, but I'm talking about like I'm looking at cryptocurrency mining. I'm looking at how you can buy a little $500 black box and plug it into the wall, and all it does is pull a little bit of electricity off your power bill, and it mines cryptocurrency anywhere from $500 to $500 a month, right? So if this box costs $500 and it can make you $500 a month, it pays for itself in a month, and then you're making pure profit after that. And what if you bought 10 of these things, right? So anyway, that's just an example of something you can take money and put it into, and it'll make returns for you, because at some point you're not going to want to put in 100 hours a week. It's just going to be it's going to be no fun, for one thing, because you're going to have other things outside of radiology that you want to do. The old school stuff is fishing and hunting and maybe four-wheeling and that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of things. Everybody has the different things. I kind of found interesting. My wife and I went to a beach over in California called Sea Glass Beach, and just hunted around for cool pieces of sea glass. And it might sound kind of simple, but it turns out there's Facebook groups on people that collect sea glass, and it's being sold like currency quite a bit. People make jewelry out of it, necklaces out of it. It's kind of cool in a way. It's a naturally occurring thing. It's broken pieces of glass that end up in the ocean, and the repetitiveness of it being beat on the sand on the beaches over and over and over again smooths it out. And so it was kind of an interesting thing. So if I wanted to, I could make it a hobby of traveling to different beaches and hanging out on the beach and looking for these pieces of glass and putting them into a collection and selling them on eBay, or making a website and making jewelry out of it. My wife and I kind of played with that, made some necklaces and things like that for the kids to wear. So you got to find a side hustle that you enjoy doing outside of radiology. But you also have to, in terms of what you're talking about, is you also have to take that money you're making as a tech and be smart with it. And don't just live large and for whatever you do, don't buy a big fancy car. Nothing depreciates faster than a car. I made that mistake years ago and bought a Dodge truck when they first came out in like '93, and they looked like little semi trucks, that big grill front. My truck payment was $495 a month. And lots of people say, man, that's a cool truck. It had a nice sounding exhaust and a StarCraft package and all that crap. And I got tons of compliments, which boosted my ego. But at the end of the day, I was paying almost $500 a month for a car, which when I went to trade it back in wasn't worth squat, because nobody cares what you add to a vehicle. Kelley Blue Book tells you it's only worth whatever the model is. And so be smart with your money. And if you want to talk about that on a live or in a future episode, let me know. I'm happy to discuss that kind of stuff. So yeah, do the work now while you can, but be smart with the money. Put it away so that you don't have to do this. We talked about starting a mobile x-ray business the other day on a live, and how you can make money doing that. There's an example of taking the money you make now and buying some equipment Like I talked about buying a little eye butterfly ultrasound transducer for $2,000, and I can open up a kiosk down at the mall for gender reveals, and I could easily charge $100 a pop. And pregnant moms would be flocking in there. What gender am I? What gender am I? What is it? What is it? What is it? And you know that's another for $2,000. I could probably ROI that back in a month. So anyway, I just want a house paid off and a car. Yeah, so that's you know. So I'm working on that right now too. I've had the big fancy houses that never get paid off, and I've had lesser expensive houses. I actually downsized about 2 years ago. Something just told me things were going to get sketchy. My job had laid me off, but I got a better job at the same company. I was a radiology director, got laid off at Christmas, but then I got the system director position that put me over all the radiology departments. And then the next Christmas, I got laid off from that. So 2 Christmas in a row, this company that I gave 5 years to totally jerked me around, which is another example of don't give your all to your company. Give them what they need and put yourself at the forefront of everything you do. But I downsized after they kind of started acting suspicious. And I can tell you, and it saved me $1,000 a month going from one house to the next. I pay $1,000 less for this house than I did for the other house. Now, did it have some things I liked? Yeah, it was on 3 acres. This house that I'm in now is in town. It doesn't have much land. I can't raise chickens or pigs or anything like I was doing at my other one to be more self-sufficient. But just be smart about the house you buy, and we can talk about that if you want at some point. When I talk about side hustles, a year ago, I took time out to get my realtor's license because we all know about the real estate boom going on right now. So I figured, well, I can do that on the side while I work my regular job because it's mostly evenings and weekends. And then I sold 24 houses last year, which was cool. But there's a lot to be said about learning how to buy a house, and I'm happy to talk to you about that if you're interested. Blah, blah, blah. How would someone with no experience negotiate pay? Well, that's what this video is about, right? So first we talked about the fact that there's a set range that they have to work with. And really, I recommend when applying for a job at the hospital that's one of your interview questions. When they say, well, do you have any questions for us? It doesn't look good if you say, nope, I don't have any, because it looks like you didn't really come as prepared as you could have. But yeah, you know what? I don't expect you to tell me what my hourly pay is going to be because I understand that factors into length of experience and all these different things. But can you just give me the range of what someone in the general x-ray position could make? And if they're worth their weight in salt, they should say, well, we pay between 23 and 27. And then they'll reiterate, but again, that doesn't mean you're going to make the highest, right off the bat. We have to start you somewhere reasonable and allow you room to grow. But at least they'll give you the range, and then you know what you have to work with. And you got to think of that range as a growth career ladder. Let's say they offer x-ray, let's just say 20 to 30, just to keep it round numbers. That means that somebody with zero experience is going to come in right around $20 an hour. Is there some room for negotiation? Yes, there's still a little bit of room for negotiation, but you can't expect to get anywhere near the mid-range or the upper range because those are reserved for people that they kind of plan on like this 20 years in the department kind of a structure. So the 20 to 30 price range means that after 10 years you'll be at 25 and after 20 years you'll be at 30. You can kind of break down that range that way. You can ask, is there any extra pay if I get a multimodality? If I get my CT license, but I'm still working in x-ray, am I going to get a bump for that? Odds are no. You won't get anything in your current modality if you get an additional modality. But if you go work in that new modality, yes, you better get a raise because you went above and beyond and got more education. And that puts you in a whole other pay bracket. So someone with no experience, you could list other related experience. You can say, yeah, I just graduated x-ray school, but prior to that, or while I was there, I worked in such and such facility, which allowed me to work with people, and I may have managed some other people, or I may have learned conflict resolution. That's one they like to hear. I was taught conflict resolution, or maybe you took some classes on the side, or maybe you did some CEUs, or maybe you did some self-help, self-improvement type courses. Conflict resolution is always a good one. That's always an interview question. Tell us about a time when you didn't get along with your coworker and what you did to resolve it, right? So you just have to think about what you bring to the table that sets you apart from the other people. Um, Anything you've done, any civic organization, well, I've been a volunteer with the police department for the past 3 years because I care about my community and I want to give back. Anything you can think of that makes you a stronger candidate compared to other candidates. Um, I did extra hours in CT while I was a student, or anything you can think of that will set you apart from the other candidates. Do you know what I could do to make my hourly pay higher? What would you say working night shifts? Oh, yeah. So I don't know if I talked about it in the video. We haven't gotten very far into it, but that's how I did it when I started. I came out in 2005. I graduated X-ray school and I was making 27 bucks an hour. And so what it was, how I did it was the pay was $17 an hour. So there's base pay, right? And I've talked about this before, but there's base pay. That's what you get hired at. Whatever they offer you and you finally negotiate and settle on, that's your base pay. But that's not the most you get paid. Your base pay, my base pay was $17 an hour. And then there is shift differential, or they'll call it shift diff, where they give you an extra percentage or dollar amount depending on what shift you work. Because the truth of it is, everybody, for the most part, wants to work the day shift. They want to work 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and be home with their families and have weekends off. That's kind of the standard American schedule. So in order to get people to work the second shift, which is like 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. or somewhere in there, they have to offer an incentive, which is more money usually. So there's a second shift differential, or say an extra 2 to 3% that they add on to your base salary, and you only get that when you're working those hours. So if they hire you on second shift and they offer you 20 bucks an hour base pay and an extra $2 an hour to work the second shift, you'll make $22 an hour within that 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. time frame. But if you pick up a shift on day shift, they may not pay you that 22, because day shift is not second shift. They may pay you your base pay. In fact, they probably will. You'll only get your base pay to work day shift, but you'll get your shift differential for working your second shift. And then third shift offers an even higher differential. Usually, well, it depends on the hospital, but I think I got somewhere around 5 to 7 bucks an hour back when I was doing it. And then there's a shift differential for working the weekends. So if you work the night shift and say you do 312s, if any one of your shifts lands on the weekend, you qualify for a weekend differential, which is the hardest job to fill in the eyes of human resources. So when I got hired at 17 bucks an hour in 2005, I was at 17 an hour plus about 5 bucks an hour to work the night shift, plus about another 4 bucks an hour to work the weekend shift, and altogether it came up to 27 bucks an hour. And that is what I got paid to work 312s Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And I thought that was perfect, because then I got 4 days off a week to do what I wanted to do. But you also have to understand that if you do any overtime or anything like that, you're not going to get that 27 bucks an hour for your overtime, unless you're doing it on the weekends, but you're already doing the weekend, so that doesn't work out. So let's say I was doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, getting 27 bucks an hour for being the weekend shift night guy. If I came in and worked a Tuesday night, I'm only going to get my base pay plus the night shift pay. I'm not going to get the weekend shift diff, because it's not a weekend. So you have to be aware that what you're making may not translate across the board to all hours. So there's a little discussion on that. Hey, Gabrielle. Yep, things are good on this end. We're just talking to Rich about should he work 100 hours a week and what to do with that money to be smart with it. He wants to get a house, things like that. He says, my dad is a tech for 40 years in call area where we live at the hospital. He works at the tech starting at 35, and after 6 months of working gets a raise of 40. Yeah, that's another tactic they do. You know, they may say, "Hey, we'll give you 40 an hour, but for the first trial period time, we're just going to give you a set amount. And if you work out and you stay, then we'll put you at the agreed upon amount." Um, what I usually see is a 120-day trial period, because hospitals always reserve the ability to fire you if they don't like the way it's working out, and they put that into the terminology of the hiring paperwork. We're going to hire you on January 1st, but we've got 120 days to kind of reevaluate you. Well, usually you get evaluated at 30, 60, 90. And if you see things you don't like in that 30 and 60, you coach. Hey, we notice you come in right as the shift starts, and then you go change into your scrub. So you're not really available for work till 15 after. We need to see it changed, or you need to be here early, get changed into scrubs early, and be at your station ready to work when your shift starts. So you coach. Hospitals HR wants to see managers coach before we start writing people up, because it causes a lot more animosity if you immediately write somebody up for something the first time they've done it. I'm not saying there's not people that do that, because there are, but hospitals usually get this 30, 60, 90 review, maybe 120 days before they go, okay, we're going to keep you on. It seems to be working out. So it sounds like your dad got something kind of like that. So that's cool. So where are we at? We're at 10:10. Give me just a second here. So we're talking about negotiating your pay, and there's a difference between negotiating pay before you get the job and going in and asking for more money. That's a completely different method. So we're not talking about negotiating pay after you've already gotten the job. Um, that very rarely happens. Hospitals just say we're not going to do it, and there's nothing you can say about it if you want to keep your job. Yeah, we talked about the 401k. There's 401k. There's what did I say? There's the health savings account instead of health insurance. If you're young and you're not sick a lot and you don't get injured a lot, which most young people don't, you can get a health savings account, and your money goes into that. And if you do go to the hospital, they take the money out of your health savings account to pay the bill instead of billing insurance. But if you don't go to the hospital and don't use your HSA, all that money sits in there, and it can accumulate interest, or it can roll over into the next year. It's a nice investment vehicle for you to check out the HSA, check out a 401k, check out a Roth IRA. That's another place to put your money. So we were talking, Gabrielle, we were talking about ways to get money out of your check before you get paid that doesn't get taxed, to save you on some of the taxes. Because when we as techs start working a bunch of hours and start making a bunch of money, Uncle Sam starts taking out more, and then you sit back and go, why? So my wife, I said, took one of these bonuses where she picked up like 80 hours and made a $3,000 bonus. 40% of that went to the IRS. That's almost half. 50% would have been half of it. So out of that 3,000, they almost took 1,500 of that for taxes. So you got to ask yourself, was it worth me picking up an extra 80 hours and giving up my personal time and my family time and my all the things I'd rather be doing for 1,500 bucks? But that's a bonus on top of your pay. So there's that. But yeah, bonuses and things like that just increase your taxes quite a bit. So let's see where I was at. I was talking about the range that a hospital has and how they're never going to start you at the highest. They're always going to start you at the lowest. But my point is going to be in the video that there's absolutely zero harm in saying, I was thinking I'm worth an extra 25 cents. And I go over how to say it in this video. But the hospital, one of the things I talk about, I'm sure, is once they have decided to offer you the job, they're not going to change their mind just because you ask for another 25 cents. What they'll say is they'll either say, nope, take what we offer, or there's no offer, or they'll say, let us think about it, see if we have the money in the budget, and kind of stall you for a little bit and maybe come back with a yes or maybe come back with a no. Or they'll say, yeah, the money, okay, extra 25 cents, but you got to prove why you're worth it. But they're never going to say, no, we're not giving you a raise, and because you asked for it, we're rescinding all of our offer. We no longer want you. Because by the time the hospital decides they want to extend an offer, they've already done a ton of work on the back end. They've already, so you have to, first you have to put an ad out there. We need x-ray techs. And that costs money. And then you have to field all those incoming resumes. You have to sort through them. They're not qualified. They're qualified. You start making these piles. And then once you get you let the ad run for a week or two or a month, and you get these resumes of who you want to interview, then somebody has to take the time to call all those people and set up times for all those interviews, which cost the hospital money, and they have to start setting up those interview dates and scheduling the radiology director, the modality supervisor, an HR representative, all these people that are in the interviews. And usually there's two groups, right? There's administration that interviews you, and then maybe they let the techs interview you or whatever. So all that work has to be done before you even come to your interview, and they have to pay somebody to do all that work. And then you have the interviews, and you interview 10 people, let's say, and then they have to sit down afterwards and calculate based on scorecards and whatnot who they like the best and who they want to extend offers to. And at some point, they also have to do the background investigations and the urinalysis to see if there's any drugs on board, and that's usually after an offer is accepted. But if they're smart, they do the reference checks and all that stuff before you even get the interview, because you may uncover something before the interview. Why waste everybody's time? But that can happen. They can interview you, and then they check your references, and if somebody gives you a bad reference, all of a sudden you know they're not offering you a job, and that's why. But the point is, by the time they make an offer to you, they're so invested in you as a potential employee that just because you say, I think I'm worth an extra 45 cents an hour, they're not going to say, never mind, we're just going to go with somebody else. They're going to say, I mean, and actually that's a smart business move. There's nothing wrong. It's actually a kind of an unspoken rule of business. Never accept your first offer. When you're buying something, paying for something, whatever, never accept the first amount. Always negotiate. Obviously, there's some things you can't. You can't go to the grocery store and buy, a six pack, and they say, okay, $5. No, I'll give you 4.25. That's not a situation you can do that in. But job interviews and job offers are absolutely something you can negotiate. And if you lose, so what? You still got the job. But if you win, it shows you thought about it, you put some effort out there, you feel you're worth it, you have value. Whether they say yes or no, you fought for yourself, which makes you feel better, and you should be proud of that. So that's where I'm at, as I'm saying there's a range as well. So I'm going to jump back off the live, unless anybody has any. That's the wrong video. It was this video. Is he going to start me over again?
I saw a great question that I've never addressed, and that I needed to wait until HR called me to discuss pay. And I wanted to share my experience with you on that topic because I was a tech for a long time, and then in administration for about 10 years, still am. And there's some things that you probably don't know if you've never been in administration, and here they are. Rule number one, and it's really business rule number one, is never accept your first offer. Very rarely does a company ever look at the scale of how much they can pay you from the lowest to the highest, or the lowest to the highest, and say, let's offer them the absolute maximum we can pay them. They never do that. If there's some competition and there's been some negotiations going on, maybe, but right off the bat, they will say, probably bring them in around the lowest, so that over time, as they get more and more experience, they can reach that maximum ceiling. Because the way salaries work is, and I've been in hospital systems where they've done nationwide evaluations to kind of level set everybody on salaries, is they kind of take a broad sweep of all the salaries across the nation, and you can adjust for acuity or how busy a hospital is, or the level of acuity of the patient. I've had HRs tell me that they pay higher for an x-ray tech that has more acute, difficult, like trauma patients, versus an outpatient clinic that has all walkie-talkies and their job's easier. I think that's crap, because on a walkie-talkie clinic, you're just going to do twice or three times as many exams as you would have. You'll pick up your game, you'll do more exams, which makes more money for the clinic. Just because you have traumas and they're...
So that's a good point, worth bringing up, is if a facility, depending on where you're going to interview and apply at, if a facility says, well, we're an outpatient clinic and we're just open 8 to 5 and our patients are much simpler to x-ray, than at the hospital. And odds are they don't even know the difference. You know, the HR people at an outpatient clinic, the office manager, whoever is interviewing you, they're really not going to know what we do as X-ray techs in a hospital, but they'll know what we do in the clinic because they've been there in the clinic. And if that did come up, that's exactly what I'd say. If they say, well, we don't pay as high as the hospital because we're a simple 8 to 5 walkie-talkie patient kind of thing, and it's not as stressful on you as a tech. And I disagree because I've seen both. My wife works in an outpatient clinic now, and well, that one where she's at, it's actually a nice. I mean, she can do up to like 30 a day on a busy day, but she can do as little as 12 depending on how many doctors are in. But I had an ortho clinic in town that was cranking out 100. I kid you not, 100 exams a day. We had this thing. I had to do all the calculations to figure it out. Through Lean Six Sigma stuff, where you have to figure out where you can improve on a process. I mean, senior administrators are always banging on us to do better, do better, do better with less, do better with less. Equipment that's going out of not out of style, but equipment that's not as fast as newer equipment. We're not going to buy you new equipment, and we're not going to give you a raise, but we want you to do more work. So this ortho clinic was doing an X-ray literally like every 3 minutes. It was insane. There was 2 techs there banging out 40 to 50 a day, and so we had to make some adjustments to that. But and there's a lot of things you can do. They were being asked to burn CDs. I'm like, nope, office staff can do that. Anyway. Just because you're in an outpatient clinic doesn't mean your value drops as a tech. And that's why they're doing 50 exams a day. You can't tell me that's not going to take its toll on you. So a tech is a tech is a tech when it comes to, we go to 2 years of school, we learn exactly the same stuff, and just because I'm not using all my skills at your location doesn't mean I didn't go to the school for it. It doesn't mean that I don't know how to do it. And it doesn't mean that I'm worth less because you don't require it. I still am worth what I am worth because I am a radiology technologist who has all this knowledge, and you need me. I could go find another job, but you might not be able to find what I can do. And these are the things you think about and talk about in your head about building up your own self-worth. So that's what I'm saying there about, don't accept less pay. A smaller hospital and a big giant hospital. Smaller hospitals tend to pay a little bit less, but there's really no reason for it because everybody gets reimbursed the same amount. Small hospital, big hospital, they both get paid the same thing from Medicare for a chest x-ray. They both get paid the same thing from Blue Cross for the CT scan. Across the board, they're getting reimbursed the same, so it doesn't matter how big your hospital is. So I'm jumping the chat here real quick. I like what Gabrielle's saying about putting your money in a 401k. Bang that out as best you can, as early as you can. And then Get Rich Jr. said, how long did it take you to cross-train into CT? I learned CT in my my clinical rotation. I'm going to minimize this. I've shared this before, so I don't want to go into great detail, but you need to pick your clinical rotations prior to getting your clinical rotations because you want to maximize what you learn at those clinical rotations. And some places are better than others. Like you want to be at a level 1 trauma for a little bit because you want to see all that stuff. And then you want to be at an outpatient clinic if you can for a little bit because you want to see that kind of stuff. You definitely don't want to be stuck in one place the whole time, and that's happened to people. But I chose a hospital that was called Mesa General in Mesa, Arizona, because they allowed clinicals on the weekends, which was gold for me because I wanted to work during the week and I had school during the week, so I could get all my clinicals done on the weekend. And I found out that because you can ask, well, who's my clinical instructor at that particular location? Who would it be? And they'll tell you. And nowadays it'd be even easier because now you just hop on Facebook and look them up, and you'll see, oh, Jim Bob is licensed in X-ray and CT, or Susie's got X-ray and mammo or whatever. And now you can start correlating who your clinical instructor would be with what they know and what you're interested in. So I found out my guy was, well, I didn't find out what he was doing because I couldn't do that back then. But I found out they did weekend rotations, and that's what I wanted. And it turns out my clinical instructor for X-ray school was a CT tech. And so when we weren't doing X-rays, he was teaching me CTs. Mostly, honestly, I think it was because he didn't want to do them. He'd rather teach me how to do them and then tell me to do them, which I did. It wasn't, he liked to teach. This was old Captain Shepard, Jim Shepard, no longer with us. He liked to teach. We had a good bond, a good relationship. And so he taught me CT while I was an X-ray student. And when I graduated from X-ray school, I got hired at that facility at Mesa General as a CT tech and was paid CT wages. And of course, I did both CT and X-ray, and I did it on the night shift. But just to show you the differences in how hospitals can react, I went to my other clinical site and said, what will you hire me on as? And they said, X-ray. You just graduated X-ray school. You'll be an X-ray tech, and that's where I got the night shift weekends. I got $27 an hour. But within a year, a CT position came open, and I went to the director and said, I want to apply for that. And they said, no, I've got you covering one of the hardest shifts to get covered, and I'm going to keep you there for a good 3 to 5 years. And once you learn everything there is to know about working that night shift, then I'll consider letting you interview for a CT position. And I went home and thought about that, and I thought, screw you. You're not going to keep me from climbing the ladder just because you got me stuck, where it's hard to fill. And I actually wrote him a letter saying, if you're not going to allow me to even interview for an advanced position, I don't see a reason to stay with this company. And I gave it to him, and he laughed about it. You're not going anywhere, blah, blah, blah. And I did, and I quit. And I left because no hospital should be playing that kind of game where we've got you right where we want you and you're going to stay there. And I quit, and that allowed me to go full-time over at Mesa General, and I worked some other places and started taking call. And I ended up back in ultrasound school anyway, learning ultrasound. But, I've learned the hard way over the years that you've got to stand up for yourself because nobody else will. I'm trying to open up the chat here. Can I pop that out? Pop out chat. All right, that's better. Once it loads. So that answers your questions about CT training. CT, the broad stroke on that is CT takes about 3 months to cross train. As a director, when I would cross train people or have people, promote them into a cross training position, typically the standard rule of thumb was it takes about 3 months to learn CT if you're in it full time. It takes 6 months to learn MRI full time. It's about 2 years to really get down IR procedures. A good IR program is about 2 years. Ultrasound can still be done on the job in some places, or you can choose your work as your clinical site and do online classes at an ultrasound school. I've done that with techs. That's 2 years because the ultrasound program is 2 years. Nuclear medicine, same way. You can get accepted into a nuclear medicine program that will allow you to choose your clinical, and you choose your home hospital as your clinical site with permission of your boss. You have to get it approved through administration. But I had a student come and do clinical rotations in Nuke Med while they went to online school for Nuke Med, and then worked on the side as a tech, X-ray tech. So that's your broad stroke on how long it takes to become a certain kind of tech. It is smart to cross train. So if your whole goal is just to keep moving up the ladder, why wait? I still recant the story about being at my X-ray clinicals, and this again speaks to that particular hospital that was kind of jerky. I was at my X-ray clinical one day, and I was thinking about going to ultrasound school, and I had the paperwork kind of spread out on the counter, and I was looking through it all, trying to figure out, did I want to go to ultrasound school when I graduated from X-ray school, and because I was looking at the next step. I knew I didn't want to be an X-ray my whole career, and maybe that's what you're saying by asking, should I cross-train as soon as possible? And so I already had the thought of ultrasound school before I finished X-ray school, and so yeah, plan it out because it won't ever go as planned. But there's also facilities, like I mentioned, the hospital wouldn't let me even interview for CT, even though I was licensed in CT. Hospitals don't always, it depends on the director running the hospital, they don't always want to cross-train. And this is another big article that I've written, and I try to get it out there as much as possible when I do conference talks with other managers and directors and CEOs. It makes more sense to cross-train from within than it does to hire from outside. But you still have probably about 30% of the directors out there that would rather hire from outside because in their mind, that tech goes to work quicker with less training because they already know the modality. But there's a lot of drawbacks to that. Like they don't necessarily know your EMR. You may be on Epic and they come from Meditech or something. So they still have to learn the EMR, electronic medical record. They don't know your hospital layout. They don't know where anything is. They don't know the staff. Maybe they're going to be a bad fit for staff and rub staff the wrong way, and staff's going to kind of bind together, come together, and say, we really don't like that guy. We're going to go to administration and say, this guy's a jerk. We don't want him here. All these contingencies that can occur by hiring a new person from outside, where if you promote from within, you're rewarding that person for their hard work. You're giving them a career path. They already know all the staff. They already know the whole way around the hospital. They already know your EMRs, your nurses, everything. It just makes more sense. And you're buying a little bit of loyalty, a little bit extra loyalty from that employee. You say, look, I'll cross-train you, but I'm doing this because I expect you to be around a while. And there's no guarantees. I have cross-trained numerous MRI techs that once they get cross-trained, they bounce to another hospital for higher pay because you can, and I don't blame them. If my hospital doesn't pay enough and the one down the street pays $5 more an hour for an MRI tech, I get it. I even had a guy bounce for higher pay, and it sucked working over there. He liked working for me better, and he asked to come back, and we had a talk about it, and I kind of rubbed him a little bit and said, grass isn't always greener, is it? But he's a good employee, and I liked him, and I respected him, and I brought him back, and I hired him back on. He's now the supervisor of the MRI department. So the grass isn't always greener, but that's one of our strategies as technologists is you get cross-trained and elevate your personal value, your professional value. If your hospital isn't respecting your value, you absolutely can start looking around and see what else is out there. And I've got a video and an article about how to research hospitals and kind of get a behind the scenes look at, do you want to work there or not? You can track the CEOs and CFOs and all that on LinkedIn and see, are they job hoppers? Are they switching? Because that's not really good for kind of building a solid work environment. If you've constantly got another new CEO every 2 years, and radiology director, where I worked here in southern Idaho, I was the 5th radiology director in about 12 years. And I took that as a challenge, but what I should have taken that as a warning sign that that nobody lasts around here for some reason, and it's probably not the fault of the radiology director. And sure enough, it panned out. I actually put 5 years, yeah, about 5 years in there, giving it my all just to get laid off in the end. And they used to say, oh, you've lasted longer than any, the staff would say, you've lasted longer than any director we've ever had. You're doing so good, blah, blah, blah. Administration didn't care. As soon as the opportunity came along to save a few bucks or restructure, I was gone. And there was no plaque. I was even employee of the year before. I was employee of the year. And what was the other thing I got? Employee of the year. Oh, and I got promoted to the highest position in the company. But didn't matter when times came to save a few bucks and reorganize. I was out the door. And so cross-train as soon as you can. Grab what you can. Think about moving if you need to make more money. It's really about how much money you make. Don't worry about loyalty. Don't worry about playing the long game, because you'll never, like I talked about earlier, you'll never make enough money in annual increases to keep up with job market changes and the pay that people coming into the facility make. You'll never keep up with it, ever. So where are we at in the chat? Does ultrasound pay? Oh yeah. So there's articles on that too. Even if you just look at that one salary thing here that the ASRT put out, it goes over all that. I mean, there's what people make based on. People say, if I get a bachelor's degree, am I going to make more money? No. Hospitals don't care what your degree is, because what matters as an x-ray tech is that you have an x-ray license. That's all that matters. You could have a PhD and be an x-ray tech, and they could care less you have a PhD. It makes you a more well-rounded person, and maybe you understand the world better, which I think has value, but corporations aren't going to pay you anything for that. They just go, can you do an x-ray? Okay, then I'm paying you for doing an x-ray. But you can see here by modality, let's see, right here. Senior tech, let's see. There you go. So here's over the years, stopping, and this is a 2019 survey. X-ray techs were making about $57,000 a year, and this is across the country, and this is an average. Obviously some pay less, some pay more, but it gives you an idea. So if X-ray techs are making 50,000, S is sonographer. Sonographers are making 77,000. That's 20,000 more dollars a year for ultrasound. And if you're like me back in the beginning stages, going, well, how can I make the most money? I want to make the most money possible in the least amount of time, so that I can retire and do what I really want to do. So you can look at this and say, X-ray makes 57, therapy or radiation therapy is at 89, nuclear medicine is at 83, MR is at 76, which is right there with ultrasound. CT's at 69. I wish they would have put this in descending order. And then mammo's at 71. So according to this chart, if you were just to take this at its face value, the most money you could make is radiation therapy. But that's another school. That's after X-ray school. It's another program you've got to apply to. You got to get accepted. You got to get in. You got to do clinicals. You got to pay to work for free. That's what clinicals are. You're paying the school to go work for free to gain the knowledge. Radiation therapy is probably in the six figures by now. This is 2019. But you've got to also weigh the fact that there's not many jobs in radiation therapy. The hospital I worked at, 220 bed hospital, I had 120 staff, and that was nurses and techs. That I didn't have the radiation therapy. That was in the oncology wing, not under me, but I think there was only 3 or 4. That's all, because it's an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday job. Can they work outside of that? Yes. But typically it's 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. How many techs do you need to run that, right? 4, really. Somebody to come in early, do a staggered schedule. Somebody comes in at 6, somebody comes in at 8, somebody comes in at 10, whatever. So yes, it pays well and the reward is high. People really like radiation therapy because you get to see the patients whose lives you're saving, but you also see the people who are dying, and you lose friends that way too. You have to, watch them suffer and ultimately die, where in general radiology you typically don't see that kind of thing. But if you continue to look at the pay, second runner-up was nuclear medicine. Again, another school, 2 more years. You've got to get in, you've got to get accepted, you got to do the time, you got to do the clinicals, you got to pay the money. And you need just about as many nuke med techs in the hospital as you do radiation therapists. So it's hard to find a job doing that. My personal favorites are sonography, which is at 77 on here. And again, these are higher now because this is 3 years old now. But ultrasound is another 2 years of school. So you do have to pay to get in the program. You have to get accepted. You have to do the time, the clinicals, working for free, all that. But what you got to remember too is whatever you end up doing, whether it's X-ray or CT or whatever, you can that higher pay that you make when you get overtime, that overtime is higher, and when you take call, the callback pay you make is higher. So if you're an X-ray tech making $20 an hour, your overtime is time and a half, so that's $25 an hour. But if you're an ultrasound tech making $30 an hour, time and a half is 30 plus 15. Now you're at $45 an hour. And when you get called in on a callback, you're supposed to get paid, and not everybody does this, but most do. You're supposed to get paid a minimum of 2 hours for getting called in. That kind of pays you for driving in, doing all the exam and paperwork and everything, sending it to PACS, making sure the RAD's got it, clocking out, driving home. They should give you 2 hours minimum for a callback. So if you're an ultrasound tech with a base pay of $30 an hour, your callback pay is time and a half. That's $45 an hour. And if you get paid a minimum of 2 hours, 45 plus 45 is 90. Now you're talking almost $100 to come in and do one exam, if that's all that's waiting for you when you get called in. You just made $100 to come in and do a gallbladder ultrasound, which might take you 30 minutes. So that's a whole other topic, talking about how call works, and I've got videos that talk about how call works. But when you're looking at what modality you want to end up in, you've got to remember that you're not just going to be making more money per hour. You're going to be making a lot more money for call and callback and those kinds of things. But your base pay goes up every time you get to a higher modality. Now, if you start stacking modalities and you're doing multiple modalities, you should get paid the higher rate of pay. So when I was doing X-ray, CT, and ultrasound, the highest rate of pay out of those modalities is ultrasound. I was making ultrasound pay around the clock. Whether I was doing an X-ray, a CT, or an ultrasound, I was making ultrasound pay. Some hospitals who are starting to get kind of sketchy and save money will say, well, you do X-ray and CT, and we pay you CT wages. But if on your shift you do a majority more of your exams in X-ray, we're going to give you X-ray pay for that shift because you really did more X-ray work than CT work, and X-ray techs don't make what CT techs make. That's a bunch of garbage. You need to fight that tooth and nail. You are what you are. You're licensed in CT. You're a CT tech. You're doing CT work. You get CT pay. Even if you go help out in X-ray, you're a CT tech who gets CT pay. But this document that I'm showing you on the screen can help you figure out who makes more, and I've got videos on it too. I think my main video that I show, the 5 reasons to choose a career in radiology, talks about this, and then you can also dig a little bit deeper into what each one of these. Some of these have higher career ladders within themselves. Like you go to X-ray, X-ray opens up all these doors, all these modalities, right? But once you move into that next modality, is there anywhere else to go inside that modality? You move into CT and you're not going anywhere else in CT. But if you move into ultrasound, for example, and become a general ultrasound tech, that's what it's called, or general sonographer or ultrasonographer, you can then cross train and even go back to school, but you can cross train. You don't have to go back to school, but there are schools, and you can learn cardiac ultrasound, heart ultrasound. It's called echosonography. And that is a whole other job with a whole other higher level of pay. And you can get a job just doing echosonography only. That's all you do all day long is echosonography. Or you could, work at a place where you do both, but you should get paid that higher pay. Echosonography, and I don't even think it's on here, pays higher than a regular sonography. And then you can even subspecialize above that and do the heart ultrasounds of pediatric patients and be a pediatric echosonographer, which pays even more. And then you can even go higher than that and do neonatal echosonography, which is just, you might as well just write your own checks. But every time you go up that ladder and become more and more subspecialized, there's less and less jobs in that area, but there's also less and less people qualified to do it. So I knew a couple of pediatric echosonographers in the Phoenix market, and they just kind of wrote their own checks. They picked up however many hours they want. They were worth their weight in gold. It was amazing. And that's where I wanted to go eventually and never got there. I got through ultrasound and I started training on echo, but the guy that was cross-training me at my work was no longer with us. He decided to take his own life. Whole nother topic, but never ended up finishing with the echo stuff. So use this document you see behind me to kind of learn who makes more than who. But then there's also other things you can do inside, like MRI. You can't really do much more. They will say there's cardiac MRI, but they make all the MRI techs learn that it's not an additional thing. Who else? IR doesn't go up anywhere. Mammo doesn't go up anywhere. Nuke Med can go into PET. That's an escalation. That's more money. That's on the job training. PET scanning. So that's kind of that's what I have to say about that, as Forrest Gump would say. Do you have to be an X-ray tech to be an ultrasound tech? Not anymore. You used to. I did. When I went to school back in 2007, you had to be an X-ray tech first. Not anymore, and I recommend that. If you want to be ultrasound, just jump right into ultrasound and start making $35 an hour right off the bat. Totally unrelated to X-ray. There was no reason back in the day. I think they just felt like, you got to put in your time to get into ultrasound school. And now they're like, no, it's really not related. Is it hard to find job as ultrasound tech? So the department that needs the most techs is obviously X-ray, because X-ray techs are all over the place. They're in the OR, they're in the ER, they're doing inpatients, they're on the floors, they're doing morning portables, they're fluoro, C-arms, they're just everywhere. So you need more X-ray techs than anything else. But every radiology department in the hospital has an ultrasound department, and typically, depending on how busy they are, they go 24 hours. And even if they don't go 24 hours, they start at 6 in the morning and go till 10 at night or midnight. So you have a first and second shift for ultrasound. So You need more ultrasound techs than you would say nuke med. Like nuke med's typically 8 to 5, 8 to 6, 7 to 6, whatever. They don't typically go unless. So here's the dynamic of a hospital. If a hospital is so busy that patients are getting held over till the next day, or complaints are coming in that patients aren't getting seen fast enough, senior administrators will tell the radiology director, you have to tell your techs they have to stay later. They're going to have to start staying until 10 o'clock at night to get more patients taken care of. And you will have to unofficially extend your hours and take your current staff and make them cover it. They won't let you create a second shift and hire new people. They'll just make you work with what you have, and that's garbage, but it happens all the time. So ultrasound always needs that, so they need more. You need more ultrasound techs than you do nuke med, but you don't need as many as like X-ray or even CT. CT's around the clock. You need 3 shifts, all week, 7 days a week, 365. So you need a good handful of CT techs in the hospital, lots of X-ray techs, a decent amount of 12 ultrasound techs in a 200-bed hospital, something like that. Plus your PRNs, your standbys that just want little hours here and there to fill in for when your people are sick or on maternity. So it's not that hard to find an ultrasound job. So I think we've answered quite a bit through the chat. I didn't go through it. We'll do a little bit more on the video. Negotiating pay. Does this start over every time I do that? That's going to be a pain in the butt. I'm going to start writing down where we're at. This is where I was talking about you're worth what you're worth no matter where you're at. They may try to tell you the level of acuity says we don't have to pay as much because we don't have traumas, whatever.
The patient, I've had HRs tell me that they pay higher for an X-ray tech that has more acute, difficult, like trauma patients versus an outpatient clinic that has all walkie-talkies and their job's easier. I think that's crap, because on a walkie-talkie clinic, you're just going to do twice or 3 times as many exams as you would have. You'll pick up your game, you'll do more exams, which makes more money for the clinic. Just because you have traumas and they're difficult patients and you have to go slower and you get fewer exams done doesn't mean your level of skill is any better than anybody else. I mean, a tech is a tech, and they're worth their weight in gold if they know what they're doing. So there's this range of salary, and they know what a beginning level tech should make and what a 10, 20, 25-year veteran should make, and they base that range on years of experience. So coming out of school, they're going to know you just got out of school, and they're going to offer you really close to the bare minimum, unless perhaps if you're in a very competitive market, say you're in, I don't know, LA, and there's 7 X-ray schools, and they've got lots of people to choose from. They may look at you and go, "Man, this person may be highly desirable to our competitor. Let's make sure we offer them a little bit above normal to try to entice them to come here." But my point is they never go all out. So whatever they offer you, you need to counteroffer. Get over the fear of, if I counteroffer and they don't like it, I won't get the job. That's not true. If you counteroffer and they say no, then you just accept the original offer.
Right.
You don't lose the job offer.
Right.
So, let's say they call you and say, "Hey, we thought you were great. We checked out your references, and we'd like to offer you $25 an hour." I would consider probably bumping that maybe $1, maybe $1.50. I wouldn't go crazy. I wouldn't go too much above it, because you don't want to be absurd about it.
So that's another good question. People always say, "Well, how much should I ask?" Well, you got to be realistic. First of all, you have to understand hospitals never want to pay you more, and you kind of have to consider, like I said earlier, there's a starting spot, a 10-year and a 20-year spot at the maximum. So if they started you at 25, if they tell you the range, that gives you a little bit more insight. But I typically wouldn't. I don't even know if I'd go for $1, because that's a significant amount really on a $25 offer. I would probably say more like 50 cents or 75 cents. Keep it under $1. I mean, do what you want to do. They're not gonna say, "You want $1.50? Joe, get the next candidate. This guy, forget it." But don't be absurd with $5 an hour, $3 an hour.
I think maybe in this video I may talk about it, but if I don't, one of the things I say in this negotiation process is you know, you've offered me 25 bucks an hour, and I think that's great. I did some calculations, and based on where I live and the time it's going to take me to commute to get here every day, you know, I'm going to spend roughly $3,000 a year just driving here and back. And that, given that and some the expenses it's going to cost me, and you know, whatever you want to say, I researched a competitor, and they're paying $3 more than you are, but I like your location better. I like what I've heard about your reputation better. All these things combined, I just really would like to ask for an extra 75 cents an hour to help offset my gas expenses, make me feel better about not going to this other hospital that's offering $3 more an hour. You know, I really want to, and just keep emphasizing, I really want to work with you guys. I liked what I saw in the interview. I liked the questions that you asked me, the research that I've done about your hospitals. That I saw that, and I go over this in the video where I show you how to research your hospital. You can easily, they're always bragging about what awards they've received. You can say, I really like that you got an award for Best Patient Survey. I really like that you're a Gold Club Standard Hospital, whatever. You know, I like you, I like you, I like you. I'm worth just a little bit more. Work with me. You know, let me make what I feel like I'm worth, and I will do the absolute best that I can for you. Can we meet on this? You know, what do you think? So that, you know, there's a way. You don't ever just want to go, thanks for the offer. I want another dollar. I want another dollar. Give them a why. Sell yourself. Tell them why. Show them that you've done some research on why you're worth that extra dollar. And they may go, well, it's not my fault you live an hour away, you know, and it's not. But you're building a case for why you want just a little bit more pay. Yeah, I get that. You know, it's not your fault I live an hour away, but it is a real expense I have to pay to be a part of your team. And you know, I could go work for that other hospital that's right down the street, but I don't want to go there. I like the fact that you guys are patient focused and that you've won awards and that you've got newer equipment than they have, and that when I talk to other staff, I found out that you do cross promote from within instead of hiring from outside. There's all these things that you can talk about why you like them. You want to fluff them, right? You want to make them feel good, puff them up. You guys are awesome. That's why I'm here. That's why I interviewed here. But just do me this one strong, right? 75 cents. That's all I'm asking. And from there, if my base salary is at 25.75, I'll know I'm getting a good value for all the hard work I put in going to school. You know, I paid $35,000 going to school to learn how to be an X-ray tech and be the best tech I can for you guys. I got to pay that back. You know, work all this stuff in, make your plan, rehearse it, talk it over, like, you know, rehearsing in front of a mirror. All these things you're going to say on why you're worth that extra 75 cents. And most of the time, they'll either come back and negotiate a little bit lower, or you know, they'll either say no, or they'll come back with a smaller amount, or they'll just give it to you. I've had that, and I've had jobs where I just ask for an extra quarter. I think I'm worth an extra quarter, and they're like, oh, who cares about a quarter? Give them the quarter. I don't want to have to meet again. Give him the quarter. And that's a win. That's a win for you. When you extrapolate that out over all the hours you're going to work, that extra quarter an hour, plus your callbacks and time and a half, it's really like 37 cents added to every hour. So it adds up. Just never accept the first thing. Is what I'm saying.
On it. But what I would encourage you to say is, thank you for that offer. It's very generous. Would you mind if I took 24 hours to think about it, and I'll call you back tomorrow? They should never say, nope, I want to know right now, or you can't have the job. They went through a lot of work, probably interviewed you, had meetings about you, maybe multiple interviews to decide you're the right candidate. If they're making an offer, they're not going to say, never mind, if you don't take this now, it's revoked. They'll say, sure, we'll give you 24 hours, you know, and they may say, but if we don't hear from you by then, we're going to move on down the line. Whatever. Take that 24 hours and do some research. See if you can find anybody that works there that can give you any kind of idea of what a starting salary might be. And nobody's supposed to talk about it, right? If you work there, nobody's supposed to talk about what they make. But it is plausible to ask an HR department even, what is the range of pay for an X-ray tech? And most of them will say what the range is. They'll never say what they'll pay you. They'll never say, you know, people say, well, I wonder what that hospital pays. You can call the HR department and say, what is the range of pay for an X-ray tech? And they should tell you. If they won't tell you, that's a little sketchy because, I mean, that's kind of like the facts. The low is the low and the high is the high. What they offer each person is case by case, and they won't want to discuss that. But the low is the low and the high is the high, and it's based on years of experience. So when they offer you that position, ask for 24 hours and you can say, you know, you really don't have to tell them anything, but you can say, you know, I'd like to take 24 hours to discuss it with my spouse, or discuss it with my parents, or to think it over myself, or, you know, if you're going to be really kind of, I wouldn't call it aggressive, but you could say, do you mind if I take 24 hours to think about it because I have some other offers?
Yep.
Because, you know, you might have other offers, you might not, whatever. You can play that card if you choose to. But my main point there is, don't accept the first offer right off the bat because you're just going to be shorting yourself. I've even taken as little as 25 cents just so that I can say, I tried, I got something. I didn't just take the first thing they offered, and I've always gotten something when I counter offered. And remember, you can always come down. You can't go back up. So if they offer you $25 an hour and you counter a 26, and they say, sure, that's fine. You go, well, you know, I was really thinking more like 27. You can't ever work your way back up. You can always work your way back down. So I just wanted to put that out there because I think as technologists, when you get out of school, man, you're just ready to get to work. You're just happy somebody gave you a job and you're not doing free clinicals anymore. And so the first...
That reminds me of Defending Your Life. Watch that movie, Defending Your Life. It's about a guy who dies and he's got to get into heaven and he has to go through this interview process, you know, where they review his life to see if he's worthy of progressing to the next stage or whatever. And one of the flashbacks they show him about his life, because he's advocating for himself. Yes, I'm ready to go. He's like, I'm ready to go to the next level. And they're like, are you sure you're ready? Because look at this. And they go to a part where he's up for a promotion at work or something, and he's telling his wife, I'm going to stick it to him, and I'm going to get what I'm worth, and I'm not going to accept no for an answer for the pay that I want. And then when it actually plays out, they show him walking into the office, shaking the hand of the boss. The boss says, we're prepared to offer you blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, deal. And he shakes and like doesn't even hesitate to accept what they offer right out of the gate. And they end the clip and they kind of look at him like, you know, I thought you were going to really stick it to him. And he's like, I panicked. We do that, and I've done that. And I get it, and that's what I think I was just saying. When you get out of school, you're so beat down from having to do clinicals for 2 years for free. Actually, you paid to do clinicals. That you just want to get going. You're like, they want me. How exciting is that? I'm actually getting a job in the field that I wanted, that I went to school forever. I can't wait to get started. Pay me whatever you want to pay me. Let's get going. And does that say volume? What do you mean, Rowena? Am I not talking loud enough, or is it too loud, or what? So anyway, don't get too excited. Just jump right on that. I can back down my microphone. Is that what you mean? I'm not hitting the reds unless I say something really loud. So picking up from there.
Job that offers you something, you're like, sweet, I'm in. I'm ready to go. I got to pay off these student loans or whatever. Take a moment and take a breath and be proud of the fact that you passed the boards and that you've gotten yourself through school and that you've got somebody interested in hiring you. That's a big thing, man. So don't just accept the first thing they throw at you. Politely defer for 24 hours and say, hey, that sounds great. Would you mind if I just think about that for 24 hours and I'll call you back tomorrow? I guarantee it. I promise it. You know, however you want to say it. And then you can go on the ASRT website and look up, I believe it's the ASRT website. They show all the hourly wages across the country. You might have to have a membership, though, to access that. I think it is a membership only.
I showed you that link earlier. I put it in the comment section. I have also written a
post about average pay across the country. I did an article that talked about like the top 5 or top 10 states to keep the most money in your pocket.
Talked about that too.
Meaning, California may pay you $50 an hour, but taxes and high rent and everything else leaves you with $5 in your pocket. Or someone like Idaho may offer you $25 an hour, and you get to keep 15 of that after taxes, or whatever the ratio is. I see a lot of people making that mistake where they just ask, what's the hourly pay? It's not about just the hourly pay. It's about the state taxes and the cost of living in that area and some other factors. So do yourself a favor and check out that article I wrote about how to keep the most money in your pocket from what you get paid. And it'll explain a lot of that, and it'll also list, I think I got all 50 states in order of who lets you keep the most money in your pocket. I'll link to that in the description below to help you out. I hope this has been helpful. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.
Yes, please hit the like button if you haven't already. Get Rich Jr. Yes, ultrasound was very difficult. It's inexplicable. It's hard to explain the differences because, you know, like right now you probably don't know anything about ultrasound. And when you look at the monitor, when an ultrasound tech is doing an exam, you're probably going, what are they? And the tech will be like, oh, there's the, you know, there's the abdomen or whatever. If they're doing an OB scan, they're like, yeah, there's the forearm, there's the nose, whatever. And you're like, what? Ultrasound was difficult only because, well, it's different physics, completely different. And how you see things on the screen is completely. X-ray is pretty cut and dry, right? You X-ray a bone, you see the bone, there's the bone. And it looks, for the most part, 99% of the time, just like the one in the book that you learned. Ultrasound is completely different, and it's difficult to learn. But once you, it's like a foreign language. If you've ever learned a foreign language, once you get a certain depth into it, it starts to kind of come clear, and you start to understand, and it's not as difficult, and you learn at a faster pace. But just understand that it's just like X-ray in the sense that once you put in your time, you'll understand it. X-ray, by the time you graduate, you know how to do all the exams. You just have to build up confidence. Same thing with ultrasound. By the end of 2 years, you know how to do all the exams. You just need to build up your confidence, and that comes from repetitiveness. And that's the thing about when you're in school doing competencies. You just want to do as many as you can. You may, like, I sucked at ribs. I hated ribs. I hated oblique ribs. I hated rib series. I hated trying to figure out the techniques for ribs. I just hated ribs. But you get over that by doing rib after rib after rib after rib, you know, just repetitiveness. And so same thing with any other modality. The more you do it, the better you get. I mean, we all get to the point after a while where we can do it in our sleep, you know. When I would work the night shift and cover X-ray, CT, and ultrasound, I basically sat in the ER with the doc, and when something came in, we'd look at it, and I'd go, yeah, that should probably just go to an ultrasound for a gallbladder based on the symptoms and forget doing an abdominal X-ray unless you want to see bowel gas or something like that. And, you know, there comes a point when you get so good at what you do that it's second nature. So, Rowena, you didn't chime back in and let me know what you meant by volume. I don't know if you mean my mic's too high, because my mic's broken. It's actually on the floor. My Yeti got knocked off my desk. I knocked it off and it broke. So I'm using the mic through my webcam, and I'm sure it's not the highest quality as what my Yeti was. So I'm not sure what you meant by the volume FYI comment, but if you can chime back in, that'd be great. On the screen, I'm not hitting the red zones. I am getting a little bit into the yellow zones, but anyway, that is the discussion on negotiating your salary after the interview. I have videos and blog posts that take you from do I want to work in radiology? What? Tell me everything about radiology that makes it a good career. I have that. Let's see if I can get to it. I mean, I have the whole gamut. I have from start to finish on this career path, this thing that we do. Let's see if I can. I'll scroll back to that while I'm talking to you. But thank you for everything. It means a lot. Your inspiration, sir. Thank you. You've helped me a lot in a matter of hours. Yeah, anytime. I wish I could sit here and do this all day. I would rather do this than go to work. My work just texted and said, you know, things are slow. Maybe you don't even need to come in. Stand by. I'm like, woohoo! I don't even want to go in. So all the way back here, 5 reasons to choose a career in radiography. That's 2 years ago. It's kind of one of the first things I put out on what we do. Thanks, Larisha. Laresha, hope I said that right. Laresha. Um, so I start out, here's what radiology is, because that didn't used to be out there for me 20 years ago. I didn't know what the hell I was in X-ray school when they said, now let's learn about barium enemas. I'm like, wait, what? I got to put what where? It wasn't out there. There was nothing. They don't tell you that when you're checking out the school. By the way, you're going to be people. So I want to get that information out there, not necessarily about the BEs, but a total picture, right? And I want to have these conversations with you guys like this, where I can share information that you may not have yet. So I start off with what does a clinical setting look like if you work in a clinic? What does a hospital setting look like if you're an X-ray tech in the hospital? And then people say, well, I got to work, I got to pay bills. How am I possibly going to go to school? I talk about that. I did. I worked 1 to 2 jobs the entire time I went through X-ray school and ultrasound school. And my wife went through X-ray school, and we have 6 daughters, and we managed. So it can be done. And then I talk about, as a director, I'm interviewing people nonstop, and I reverse engineer them. I tell you what my top 10-ish interview questions are, why I ask them, right? Why I ask them, and what I'm looking for in the answers to help you guys when you're interviewing. I had to put on a conference, so I put in, this was kind of more for managers out there. Not a big part of our membership is management, but I welcome managers, and I'm happy to help out those guys as well, guys and gals. Then I make some fun of people that call us technicians and stuff like that. But then these initial videos are really my blog posts that are on the radiologictechnologist.com turned into videos. So if you go to the sitemap on the blog, I started trying to list everything by topic up here, categories, and by subjects. So you could kind of read through, and this is the same kind of progression as the videos. So I would write the articles and then I would turn them into videos. But I started talking about the different careers, how to be a radiation therapist, what that looks like, how you get into the program, job opportunities. And then being a travel tech, how many jobs do you know of that you can learn how to be something like an electrician? You can't be a traveling electrician because you have to get, well, I guess you can. I was going to say you have to be a licensed in each state to be an electrician, but so do we. But typically, you just apply, it's a money grab. If I'm in Idaho and I want to go work in Texas, I just pay the Texas board $25 or whatever, and they give me a license. I'm already licensed through the ART. That's what matters. But I do an article on how to be a traveling tech, and I like to interview people in the field, right? So I interviewed a guy that owns a traveling agency, and he gave me his input. Like people say, well, how much do you get paid as a travel tech? Well, I asked him that, and he told me how that breaks down, why you make what you make. Forensic radiography is a really cool aspect that not many people know about. They don't talk about it in school. It's not till you're a tech on the night shift that you find out that the county coroner shows up with a dead body and says, I need you to x-ray the arm. Or they bring the arm in a bag and say, x-ray this arm for me. I'm looking for, is there a fracture that might tell me what happened to this person? Or is there a bullet fragment in there? Or they don't tell you in school that you're going to be x-raying dead bodies until you're on the job and the coroner brings one into you. So I talk about that. I talk about forensic radiography and how to get into it. I talk about, everybody wants to know, how do I pass my boards? What's the best way to study? This is a big, long article on my website that goes over many different proven study methods to help you retain the most information. And so I'm just kind of walking you through, what is the job? What are the different types of jobs? How do I study to pass the boards? Technique charts that are used. Radiation safety officer. Many people don't know that's out there. You can be an RSO, an RRA. Not many people know about that. That's the highest part of the ladder for X-ray techs. And then back to what it looks like to be an outpatient clinic. I talk about the pigostat. A lot of people don't know about the pigostat until you get into it. And it's scary to some people until you learn it's a savior if you use it right. Can I work full-time and go to school? What are the common injuries I'm going to see? The school's not necessarily going to tell you that. What exactly is a rad tech? What can we do? What do we wear? Where do we wear to work? How much do we make? That's a big question constantly. How much do we make? I got a two-part burnout series, and I actually talk about this in conferences across the country every year because that's a big thing. Managers want to know, how do I prevent this burnout that's happening? How to get into school, a day in the life. That was the day for me that was kind of interesting and moving, and I shared that. More common injuries, the CQR requirements. An application specialist is another job we can do that isn't really talked about. Study guides, some jokes I made here. Is it better to be a rad tech or a nurse? I'm sporting my Santa beard. Every Christmas I play Santa locally, so I grow my beard out and make it nice and bushy. So that was around Santa time. How to deal with abusive patients. Your school isn't necessarily going to tell you that, but it's going to happen. You're going to have patients that are drunk that are going to try to abuse you physically and verbally. You should check that out. I reviewed my school that I went to X-ray school at, Pima Medical. People are always saying, "Am I too old?" Somebody just posted in our Facebook group, I'm going to be entering X-ray school and I'm 59. And you've got to, some people are like, "I'm too old to go back to school." No, you're not. We're living. Betty White just made it almost to 100. So you go into X-ray school at 60 and graduate at 62, you're looking at another 30 years if you wanted to. That's a whole nother lifetime of it. Even if you did 10 years, that's 10 years in a brand new career that could be exciting and rewarding for you. And people say, well, if I'm an older tech, who's going to hire me? Well, I addressed that in one of these too, and why we as directors don't discriminate based on age, because there's a lot of benefits to hiring a more mature employee. I talk about Rad Tech Week a lot. I'm a big proponent of Rad Tech Week. COVID-19 started to come in here. Night shift. We'll talk about night shift and the pros and cons. Does a bachelor's degree matter? Clinicals. Talk about clinicals and why I chose ultrasound school. How to make a resume to apply for the job. Both nursing and radiography schools. Should I be a nurse and a rad? So that's an option. You can actually be a radiology nurse. And if you were an x-ray tech who became a nurse, you're worth your weight in gold there because you understand both sides. Radiographer to radiologist. I get that every now and then. What if I just want to go all the way to being a radiologist? Who would make a better radiologist than a radiographer? I mean, really. What's the difference between the associates and the bachelors? Is the market saturated? There's still people out there, not so much anymore because COVID made a big difference. But there used to always be people who did bad at their clinical rotations and then had a hard time finding a job. They'd be very vocal about poo-pooing the market, saying there's no jobs out there, when really the fact is you did so bad at your clinicals, none of your clinical sites wanted to hire you. So I talk about the rad techs, market saturation. Somebody said, do I have to start IVs as a tech? Yeah, you do. You don't have to. There's ways around it. If you have nurses, they can do it or whatever. But we are trained as x-ray techs to start IVs. Being both a nurse and a rad tech. Here's a rad tech that got interviewed during COVID that I thought was an excellent interview. She talks about what we do and why we should be valued. There's one we're talking about now, negotiating the pay. X-ray versus ultrasound. Well, here's the one I told you about, how to check the hospital before you apply. How to do Google research, LinkedIn research on the employees, the CEOs, the radiology directors. That's a great way to check it out before you apply to make sure you want to work there. Multimodality training and options, questions asked to admin, how to choose your clinical rotations before you get clinicals. I mean, you might get assigned to them and have no say, but if you're allowed to, even if you're going to get assigned, I would research your clinical rotations before you start them in depth. Don't just say, oh, well, they're giving me county hospital, that's where I'm going, I'll show up on day one. Research it, look at what they're doing, look at they'll put what their equipment is online on their website. You can look up who their CEO is, who their radiology director is. You can look at their histories. You can see if that department has had any awards. You can see if they've had any problems. Research your clinical rotation so you know what you're getting into. Veterinary radiology versus general radiology. This is about how I travel around to different schools and take pizzas during Rad Tech Week and answer questions to the students. Radiology management as a job. Should I apprentice as an aide first before rad tech school? Rad tech versus project manager versus application specialist. Just other jobs you can do. There's just a ton of videos. I mean, I don't need to go over each and every one of them, but there's a ton of videos. Basically, a 3-year brain dump of my 20 years in radiology, just sharing it all and hoping that it benefits you. And I'm going to try to, I've been trying to do these lives more frequently. So I used to think they weren't worth it unless people are in here with me. Because there's definitely more value if there's people in the chat with me where I can answer questions in real time. But what I've learned through feedback, because on my blog here, there's a tab at the top for contact where you can go and you can put in your name and email address and tell me, you ask your question. What I found is I'm getting a lot of emails from people saying, you know, I watched the live after the fact and it was very helpful. And then they'll ask me more questions and then I'll come on here. In fact, that's what this video started out as today. Somebody said, hey, that negotiating your salary video really helped me a lot. So I came on to talk about that today because I haven't discussed it in over a year. So I'm going to do these lives where I would like to see more people on because I feel like I'm helping more that way, but I'm also getting feedback that it's still helping even if there's not a lot of people on because it's a permanent record and it'll always be out there. And that's kind of one of the beautiful things about radiology is a lot of it doesn't change. I mean, anatomy doesn't change. Positioning doesn't change. A 3-view hand has been a 3-view hand for 100 years, basically. So a lot of it, the things we talk about, how to respond to abusive patients, you know, that's not going to change. You stand up for yourself. You recognize. I used to tell doctors at that Mesa General Hospital where I worked nights for 7 years, whatever it was, if I got an abusive patient that was cussing at me in the ER, I'd turn around and go back to the desk and say, hey, doc, I'm not going to x-ray that guy unless he calms down or you sedate him or something, but I'm not here to be abused like that, and I'm going to go back to my department. And half the time they go, yep, I get it. He's a jerk. Forget it. It's his problem. Or he'll say, okay, hang on. I really need the x-ray or whatever. Let me talk to him or let me sedate him or whatever, and I'll call you, you know, when they're ready. Back to you having value and you having worth. You're not just the faceless employee that's there to get exams done. You're there because you have specialized training and you have something to offer to that facility that nobody else can. And so you don't have to put up with abusive patients. But I'll get off my high horse there. Thanks for stopping by. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. And if you have any questions, shoot them to me through the website there. And don't forget about our Facebook group over here, the Radiologic Technologist. Let's see, what's it called? How do I think it's what did I click? The Radiologic Technologist group, I believe is what it's called. I'm moderator over several because they've asked me just to kind of help them out. I moderate radiology, I moderate x-ray technologists, but my group is the Radiologic Technologist group, 4,000 members. I don't know what that was. Go see. Anyway, thanks for stopping by.